Well, I think that there's considerable uncertainty in world affairs today, where there were once things that were given and were very predictable. We are now seeing more volatility in policy decision making, which has implications for investors and for sovereigns in terms of the way that we go about things. For our part in New Zealand, we tend to want to be a beacon of stability amidst all of that, to say, you know what, we're going to continue to be rules-based. We have low, stable inflation. We have declining interest rates. We're going for growth. We trade with many countries around the world and wish to continue to pursue freer trading relationships. We have prospects for growth. And so we aim to be stable, predictable. We have secure institutions, and we think those things will be at a premium in the coming years as there is more volatility.
Mr. Willis, whenever we have officials from other countries visiting the U.S., which is a big part of your job, we always ask the question about a particular trip. Why are you in New York right now? Why are you visiting us right now?
We're here because we value very much both our economic and security relationship with the United States, and I'm pursuing more economic growth for New Zealand and New Zealanders, and we believe it's in the interests of both of our countries to forge stronger trade and investment ties in pursuit of that.
So how does that work in an America First environment, in an environment from Washington, D.C., where the communication has been very strongly, this is an administration that is looking at the priorities of the U.S., whether or not it affects other countries in a negative way?
Well, quite simply, our proposition is it's in the United States' interests to have a strong and growing relationship with New Zealand. We're part of the Five Eyes security partnership along with Canada, the United Kingdom and Australia, and we continue to believe that's very important for the United States. We also have a very complementary trade relationship. We export primary products, tech services, which Americans value, and equally we import significant amounts from the United States, and we'll continue to do so. We, like many countries, are increasing our investment in defence, and it's likely that some of the kit that we will be purchasing in future will be manufactured in the United States. Similarly, when our national airline replaces its fleet, it's likely that some of those planes will be produced in America. We have very strong and long-standing people-to-people ties. Our two countries have got along well for many, many decades, and we think it is in the interests of both countries that New Zealand continue to be a strong relationship that the United States can look to and rely on.
So is this White House, though, impacting the relationship, the strong relationship that New Zealand has had with the United States in any way?
We continue to view the United States as our friends. Now, of course, we would prefer not to be facing additional tariffs. Find me a country that says, yeah, we really like additional tariffs. And we're not in that. We're not in that situation. And we have a history of pursuing freer trading agreements. We have very, very low trade barriers for United States imports, and we feel we've treated American exporters very well. So we would prefer to be on a lower tariff rate. We've ended up at 15% as a base rate, which reflects the fact we have a small trade surplus with the United States. We're talking very marginal New Zealand dollars, 500 million. So it isn't big. We don't really think...
But it's disappointing that it wasn't maybe the 10% that folks were thinking initially.
We would have preferred that. We understand the rule that's been applied, but it's hard to conceive that New Zealand, a country of 5 million people, has any kind of threat to the manufacturing or industrial base of America.
Does it lead, though, and I guess we're trying to figure out, we talk a lot about the geopolitical world order changing around. We talked about, the president was just asked about maybe closer ties between China and Latin America. China already has a presence, we know, in Latin America, but maybe they are increased as a result of what's going on. Are you forging different relationships because of some of the strained relationships out of the United States, or strained relations out of the U.S.?
I wouldn't characterize it that way. New Zealand has always looked to forge relationships around the world and to reinforce the rules-based system wherever we can, and to work through multilateral institutions because we're small and our voice will never be the loudest. Like the United States, we have a strong and important economic relationship with China that we've been able to maintain while also taking very different points of view on many matters, and we've been able to balance those two things.
So not strengthening them with China because of maybe what's going on?
No,
today?
I would not characterize it that way, but continuing to lean into our relationships where we have common interests. So we are members, for example, of the CPTPP trade relationship, and we have welcomed the EU's interest in becoming a dialogue partner and looking to reinforce that trade arrangement. We've recently signed free trade agreements with the United Kingdom, with the European Union. They're important, with the GCC, the UAE, and we're pursuing a trade relationship with India. We think it's very important as a small exporting country that we have options in who we trade with, and wherever possible try and open more doors. We've got a grand history of doing that. We were one of the first countries in the world to drop subsidies to ensure that we were genuinely open to the world. We won't get rich selling to ourselves. We're too small for that. So we do well when the world welcomes our goods and services.
Minister Willis, are you meeting with any U.S. officials on this trip?
Not on this trip, 36 hours only, I'm afraid, but I look forward to returning to Washington later this year for some of the annual meetings, and at that point I would hope to meet with some people from the administration.
At that point, will part of your job be to try to reduce the 15% tariff on goods from New Zealand?
Well, look, we're realistic about the fact that the Trump administration have set a clear parameter that countries that have surpluses are unlikely to get reductions in their tariffs. But we will continue to advance our case, which is that we have a very complementary trade relationship with the United States built on a security partnership and a very long history. And we will press the case for our exporters that we think be fairly facing a lower rate. And we will continue to share that message with our friends in the United States to make sure that if there is reconsideration of the current tariff regime in future, that we're front of the line for reconsideration. We think we should be. We're Kiwis. We play fair. We play by the rules. We sell you Sauvignon Blanc tourism experiences and lean red meat that Americans love. And we would like you to be getting it at fair prices into the future, and a lower tariff rate supports that. And we expect to continue buying huge amounts of American goods into the future. So there's nothing to fear from giving New Zealand a lower tariff rate in the future.
You're also great sailors. I'm just going to point it out as a fellow sailor myself. We're talking with Nicola Willis. She's Minister of Finance of New Zealand here in our studio at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. What are you guys doing to encourage foreign direct investment?
Yeah, well, we're very big on this. So we've set up a new entity, Invest New Zealand, to connect international investors with New Zealand. We're reforming our legislation to make it easier for foreign investors to make investments, and administratively we've sped up the process by which they can do that. Particularly, we've introduced golden visas, the Active Investor Plus, which means that investors can get residency rights in exchange for making investments, either actively or passively in New Zealand assets.
Is it working?
It is working. We've been delighted by the response, a really high degree of interest. Hundreds of people have applied for those visas within the first few months, pledging over $1 billion in New Zealand funds. And I think that reflects two things. One, New Zealand is a safe, secure place in a world that increasingly is less so. And people like the idea of having that residency in New Zealand. But second, they can see that many of our investment opportunities are currently undercapitalised. Investing in New Zealand is a good bet.
Can they buy real estate in New Zealand, though, if they get residency?
Not currently. That is excluded. Our government, which is comprised of 3 parties, has been in discussion about loosening those regulations so that those who get an active investor visa may in future be able to purchase a property in New Zealand.
How far into the future? What are we talking about for a timeline here?
Well, those talks have been underway, and you would expect that a decision would be made by our cabinet in the coming weeks.
Okay, in the coming weeks. So, Carol, get ready. You can buy
I'm in.
Your little slice of paradise. We're surrounded by a big fat ocean.
I know.
We have huge amounts of land. It's beautiful. I think the world should be looking at New Zealand. We have great prospects.
Will the U.S. tariffs impact growth in your nation?
Well, as I said, we'd always prefer not to be facing those tariffs, but as a proportion of our overall trade, it is actually quite small. The more significant impact for us is the same as it is for many other countries, which is a lower rate of global growth resulting from tariffs and retaliatory tariffs.
Are you worried about a global recession then?
Well, no, not a recession, but just a lower rate of potential growth than would have otherwise been the case, particularly out of our trading partners. That then affects prices for our goods and demand for our goods. And
I mean, it can slow enough to feel like a recession,
well,
right?
It can slow enough to feel like we're not meeting the potential that would have otherwise been realised. And that's been reflected in our forecasts for the New Zealand economy, in which we did pare down our growth expectations for the future based on what was developing with tariffs. You know, obviously there's a lot of water to go under the bridge to see how all of this does play out globally, how countries are affected and what it means. For New Zealand's part, we continue to forecast strong growth, low inflation. That will remain the case, but a tariff-free world is one in which we grow faster.
Do you think that might come back if there's a different president in the White House?
I think countries will always continue to pursue their own interests, as they should.
Yeah.
And that's why I will keep singing the song for freer trade, because that is in New Zealand's interests.